So what's happening? Well, I'll get back to that thought in a second. But you saw the scavengers, all the kids. They really will run there and sit there with their hands looking for material. And there's one of the girls selling water. And there's the neighborhood in the back. I think that's just about it. Okay. And there are risks. It may be obvious that burning, cutting, and is there any worker comp? Is there any remedy? If you lose a limb, that's it. You know, you got to find another trade. And again, this is happening all day long. During daytime hours, the smoke migrates left and right. Here's a bundle of processed copper wire, straps it onto his bicycle, and he's going to take it where it's going to be weighed. And then the scavengers jump in. The fire has continued to smolder. Boys of all ages. And of course, the smoke does travel east and north into Ghana, into central Accra. So you would think there would be some communities upset about this, but it's a challenge to sort of process it. You can't just say stop the burning without giving them some engineering solutions. Now, it sort of gives you a sense of the site, huh? But it's a maze. I don't quite get lost because I sort of know my way around. But basically, you follow the smoke. So I know the smoke is here, so the river must be there. That's how I get out. But I generally don't walk around alone anyway in this area. Anna, can you see he's holding? Can anybody tell what that is? Say it again. Speaker. And what do you know? What's at the end of a speaker? Magnet. Very good. And keep going. You're on a roll. I'm going to go get a snack and you could finish this. So he is got a magnet and a bag. And he's looking for ferrous metals. And here's another child who's got the magnet, the speaker, being dragged on a string. You can see the line, see? And he'll just drag this thing all day long, every now and then picking up some metal, and he'll put it in his little bag. One of those bags is 50 cents, $1 a day, whatever he can get. So I'm amazed the ingenuity of people that if there's something they can recycle and homogenize, they will do it. And there he is. And we're actually thinking about how to expedite this instead of giving them speakers, which by the way are recycled from other materials there. So some of the chemical exposures, I went over a couple of them. Given that the burning occurs at ground level, the plume hugs the ground. You can see it's diverting upward, but on the bottom it sort of hugs the ground. So if you were somehow able to lift this combustion, you at least can get it out of the breathing zone, at least directly of where people are. Now we're not big on lifting the burn site or having a furnace, but at this point we're looking at interim controls and long-term measures. So what can we do quickly versus the long-term solution? And the smoke is migrating. You can see all these people are exposed. All of a sudden the wind will shift and it'll go this way, and you're always walking around trying to avoid the smoke. And of course a constant haze. So what are these things? Bags of? Say it. Onions. It's like a zillion onions. Well, you know, I'll let you know when we go back, but I mean, onions are sort of a universal food in many, but it's not just onions. This is grain. And what's the lesson I'm trying to impart here? Right? You get it, right? Particulates settle, metals settle. This is not immune to some accumulation. And are people cleaning these beans before they're cooking them? Are they, crushing them into a flour? Exactly do they have the resources to do that? And given that environmental pollution, and this is one of our problems at Blacksmith, is very often the symptoms aren't so black and white, like arsenic. These blotches, these skin lesions are caused by arsenic. Very often the symptoms of environmental pollution are very subtle. Cancer, liver damage, irritation, not something you could pinpoint very easily. And therefore it's hard to convince them, saying your health status may be related to your exposure. Well, I guess you know what I'm trying to say here, right? Goats, if you know much about goats, you probably know they eat anything and everything, right? And of course they're eating things off the ground, bioconcentrating toxins. Goats make milk. People eat goats, though they don't really eat these goats. They don't eat goats. It's meat, and essentially you have another pathway. So when we do work at Blacksmith, we look at pathways. Water, air, food, all different pathways, and then figure out which is the dominant one and which one do we need to shut down. So when we went there, we wanted to assess some exposures. I brought some students. We took some air samples with support from Blacksmith. We put monitors on people. We put some samplers around the burning sites. We measured acid gases, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, metals, volatile organic acids. And we sat and waited and waited and waited. And essentially we found elevated levels of metals and acid gases. The polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, we didn't find high levels, but it was our sampling methodology that needed to be improved on that. So, but look, do you really need environmental samples? After a while, well, why are we wasting our time, right? Do we have to prove or show this is dangerous? At some point, you have to say, stop, scientists, just fix it. Because you could study it for the rest of your life. But very often, governments want reports with scientific, authentic data with integrity that has soil levels. So here we did do some extensive soil sampling. We analyzed it for lead. Here's the market. If you're wondering, this is the food market up here. We have a football pitch here, a football soccer field. And then over here we have many of the e-waste processors. These dark areas here are the burning sites. So at least they're staying away from the burning sites. And I know you can't read all these numbers on these dots, but essentially they're lead levels, soil lead levels. And just to give you the end result, again, you don't need to study this too much. EPA standard for the maximum acceptable in soil for child contact area is 400. 16% of the samples were below 400. The rest of them were above 400, and some were quite amazing, 1.5% lead. So lead, I think you know, which is going to be a subject of another talk. We do some fascinating work with lead. IQ deficits and cognitive deficits. So lead is a serious childhood environmental toxin. So what we're really doing, and I sort of mentioned this in the presentation, trying to look at these individual processes and come up with some ideas. And by all means, we don't know it all. There are experts in the room. If you have some clever ideas, obviously it seems like a handheld wire stripper may work wonders here. But some of these are thick wires, so it's not as easy as just buying wire strippers for everybody. But we have some ideas. Also, occupational health. I think you saw one picture of a guy with a respirator. He's the only person. He's a real character. He's a great guy. But obviously, things from basic sanitation to respirators or gloves or whatever we can do. We're at least saying at the end of the day, change your clothes, don't go into your home like this. Don't go to sleep without washing your feet. So things like this. So there's all sorts of educational intervention. And again, perhaps with the exception of this house in the background, which is haunting me. I don't know. I think so. I need to go in and Photoshop it. I mean, look at it. It's obviously the person that buys all this stuff and sells it for 5 times the amount. He probably lives here, right? So, but talk about disparities. Look, do I need to say much about a picture like this? You know, I think it sort of says it all. So going back, it really does become, is it waste? You know, and again, you probably know that NPR did a story, and they talked about how on Christmas Day, 3.5 million iPhones were activated, and iPads, which means someone either got rid of their old one or is not going to use their laptop anymore. And my laptop, my baby, he is 5 years old, and Martina's always saying, I'll get you a new one, and I'm saying, no, no, no. You know, and now I'm obsessed with just keeping it going. Yeah, it'd be nice to have an iPad, but, you know, do we really need it? But this is this planned obsolescence that, that is sort of built into our system here. So, I just want to say Blacksmith does more than just work with partners to facilitate cleaning up some of these sites. All of these dots are waste sites where we're sort of the leaders in creating a Superfund site for the planet. I think you know what Superfund is. It's a listing of hazardous waste sites. Is there a hazardous waste site for the planet? And Greenpeace doesn't have one. UN, of course, doesn't have one. It would be so political. They don't want to go anywhere near something like that. So the nice thing is with Richard Fuller's insight, we created this global inventory project, and we're helping to identify these sites. And you see there, this is an old map. It changes, right, Brett? It changes, what, weekly? And you could see some of these sites, mining, lead-acid batteries, pesticide storage, on and on. And like I said, we have many people here from Blacksmith that could talk more about sort of what they do. But I want to thank you for your time. You've been pretty quiet. But I think we have time for some questions. So.